Hello everyone. Under the sources of finance, we are going to discuss today short-term finance. So the first short-term finance is trade credit. So under trade credit, what happens is that the suppliers of the organizations give credit to the organizations in the terms that the suppliers allow the organizations to give the money to repay to the suppliers for the goods and services at a later date or in some future specific date. How this is termed as credit is because when the suppliers are not asking for the cash or for the payment at the exact moment at that time, but at some later time, that time period, that time frame gives organization chance to invest their money that they would have given to the supplier for the use of goods and services in some other thing. Okay, so that becomes credit by the suppliers to the organizations. So cash is not immediately paid and deferral of payment represents source of finance. See, for example, suppose an organization A has to pay 1 lakh rupees to the supplier for the goods, for the raw materials that has been delivered to organization A. Now what organization A asks from the supplier is that I want trade credit. Now this supplier will allow trade credit to the organization A by not taking the money immediately from organization A, but asking the organization A to pay the amount after 1 month or after 2 months or after 6 months. Okay, so this period of 6 months give the organization a credit of 1 lakh that can be used in some other thing than paying to the suppliers. Okay, so in layman's term or in Hindi we also call this trade credit as udhar. Okay, so how it is termed as a trade credit is that like I told you, that time period the organization has bought that time, and that time, that 3 months or 4 months, for whatever time the trade credit is given, that time and that money, that 1 lakh rupees can be invested in something else. Okay, so let's do the features of trade credit first. There are no formal legal instruments, acknowledgements or debt. So it is a bit personal agreement between the supplier and the organization. Okay, so there are no formal legal instruments for trade credit. Why would a supplier want to give trade credit? Because everybody wants money, right? So why would a supplier want to take the money in a future date? Because the supplier also wants to build relationship with the organizations, and to build those relationship, to keep supplying to them, to be a permanent supplier of that organization, to have a good relationship with the organization, the supplier sometimes give trade credit when the organization needs such credit. Okay, it is an internal arrangement between the buyer and the supplier, so there are no legal formalities involved. It is an internal arrangement between the buyer and the supplier. It is a spontaneous source of financing. Okay, so no prior notices, no prior forms you have to fill. It is a spontaneous source of financing. It is an inexpensive source of finance if payment is it is an expensive source of finance if payment is not made within a discount period, because then you will have to pay the interest also. If you do not pay the amount, the payment you do not make in a specific period that has been agreed between you and the supplier, then you have to pay the interest also. Okay, and also you lose a supplier, a good supplier. That's why it is an expensive source of finance. Advantages of trade credit: it is easy and automatic source of short-term finance. Okay, just you have to make your supplier ready for giving you a trade credit. It helps the business focus on core activities. So by not paying to the suppliers, we are using that money to focus on our core activities. Suppose we wanted to buy a plant also at that time, or we had to pay to our managerial skills we had to buy. So we can concentrate that money on our core activities rather than paying to the suppliers at that point. Okay, it does not require any negotiation or formal agreement. So it is a easy process. It does not require any legal formalities, any negotiations or any formal agreement. Okay. Disadvantages of trade credit. Trade credit is available only to those companies that have a good track record of repayment in the past. Obviously no supplier would give credit to any such organizations which has a past record of not making payments. Okay, nobody would want to block their money in a company where the record is bad, the record of payment is bad. Okay, for new businesses it is very difficult to source trade credit because nobody would it because a new business does not have past data, and thus it becomes very difficult for the new businesses to establish a rapport between the supplier and itself for the purpose of trade credit. Okay, it is very expensive if payment not made on due date. Okay, like I told you, it is very expensive. That is that the supplier can take you to court. The supplier can, if there is a agreement, the supplier can, you will lose the supplier, and the supplier can also charge interest on the trade credit. Okay, so that is about trade credit. Trade credit is a source of finance in which the supplier gives some time period for the organizations to pay for the sources, the materials, the anything that the supplier has provided to the organization. So the supplier gives time for the payment. That is, the organization can pay the amount after a certain period of time. Okay, that is trade credit.